In this video, I'm going to give you a tour of an International Scout Dana 300 transfer case, a one-year only transfer case, 1980, and a Jeep Dana 300 transfer case. And this was offered in a few different configurations, but this particular one here is from an 80s, either a CJ or J Series truck. So first, let's take a look at the Scout 300. This is a pretty rare transfer case because, like I mentioned, this was only a one-year transfer case. And what's particularly desirable about this is it bolts up to a T18 transmission that you would find in a CJ7 from the 70s, 77, 78, 79. You can see the big difference here, right? So on our right, we have the Scout 300, which is almost like a Dana 20. And you have the Jeep 300, which is a different configuration. So let's take a peek at some of the differences that we got here. Let's start by going over and taking a look at the Jeep 300. So one thing you'll notice about the Jeep 300 is the length here. It's a little bit longer than that of the Scout. You'll also notice the breather is around the same spot on top, but the speedo gear on the Jeep is here, and this one is fairly common to find different tooth gears for, whereas on the Scout, not so much. These use a metal gear, whereas the Jeep models use a plastic gear. So that's one difference between the two of them, and it's a lot easier to find a new gear for your tires and axle ratio on the Jeep 300s than it is on the Scout 300. But if you compare the backs of these, zoom out a little bit, they're basically the same. Now, I believe earlier 300s that were available on the CJs had a shorter output here, similar to that of the 80 300 from the Scout. But as you can see, the filler is in about the same spot, tags, things of that nature. If we take a look at the top, from the top down, you can notice it pretty much immediately what the difference is, right? On the Scout 300, you'll see a valley here, and it's a little bit narrower, where if you look at the Jeep 300, it's a little wider and you're missing that piece. So that's a very quick way to identify whether you have a Scout 300 or not, is based on this shape here. You can almost put your hand up and feel it if it's installed in a vehicle. When it comes to the shifter setup, the setup actually looks fairly similar. So let's look at the Jeep setup first. Here you'll see now this switch is actually incorrect. I swapped this from the Scout. This switch, this two prongs four-wheel drive switch, was actually from the Scout transfer case. But I'm going to be putting it into a Jeep, so I switched the switches around. But take notice here, you have one port for the four-wheel drive switch, and then here you just have a small little port that's closed off. On the Scout 300, you have the same size, same thread four-wheel drive switch, but you also have another one. I don't know what this is for, but there's a basically a blank that you can unscrew here, and it's just made out of cheap plastic that you can screw back in. So if you're going four-wheeling with this, you might want to be careful of water getting in there. I need to come up with some better solution than that. It's not super strong. But again, if you look at the shift housings, right, they're pretty much the same. What changes is the actual shifter. So let me take a step back. The shifters are different. And this shifter, I don't know, is actually the proper shifter for this transfer case, but this shifter came from a Model 20 that would have been installed on a Scout. And I'll show you why in a second. You'll notice actually the way that this shifter is bolted in versus the way that this shifter is bolted in, it's different. So let's take a look at that. So here on the Jeep, you'll see that there's a pin, which is the same diameter all the way around. There's a cotter pin at the end and some washers. There's some sleeves, some bushings in the middle here. But the rod setup is the same. I'm not sure what this piece is called, but that's the same. The ball valve, that's all the same as it is here on the Scout. This piece is the same, pins are the same. What's different on the Scout is you'll notice this pin. This is actually tapered, so this hole is larger than this hole on the Scout, whereas on the Jeep, they're the same size. You also don't have, you can see a little black bushing. There's one on both sides. Inside of it, you don't have that bushing here either, okay? This shifter came, like I said, from a Model 20. I haven't seen if this is the same exact shifter that would have come from a Scout or not, but I know that this shifter came from a Model 20 that was from a Scout, and it fits. The pin fits here, and the shifter fits. And you'll notice the shifter goes in between these two, this fork, whereas on the Jeep, it goes on the outside of this fork, okay? And it's secured in a little differently. And this may not be exactly how it is. I just put this back together quickly for the video purpose. One other thing to mention is this is a long shifter on the Dana 300 for the Jeep. This only came, I think, in 1 year, maybe 2 years. There's also a shorter shifter right here that would have also come more commonly with the Jeep 300. So there was 2 shifter options available, but neither of these shifters would really work over here, because if you look, when I start to try to mesh it up, the biggest issue is the bolt size, and because it's tapered, you'd have a lot of slop in the shifter if you tried to use one of these. So again, I don't know if this is the proper shifter for a 300, but I know that it fits, and this was a Scout shifter from a Dana 20 from, I believe, a 79 or a 78. Now I'm just gonna bring in a little bit more. You'll see how this is mounted. There's a 5/16 screw that actually puts a little pressure on this pin, and that's what keeps the pin locked in place. Whereas on the Jeep, it's using the cotter pin on this side, and it's using the bolt on that side. You'll also see there's a grease fitting here. If I were to take this apart, there's actually 2 holes on this pin that will shoot grease into this housing area here to move it around. And you just use this bolt really to lock this pin into place. There's a nice sleeve in there that keeps it locked into one place. And I'll go ahead and take this out so you can see what this looks like. Okay, so I'll just come in close on this pin here. So you'll see there are the 2 holes that I was talking about. That's where the grease comes out. You'll see there's a little indent here. This is where that 5/16 bolt threads in and locks this pin from going this way. And you know, you have a grease fitting. So this is a very kind of unique pin, and as far as I know, these are not available for sale aftermarket. And again, this pin slides in and it's tapered on this hole here. So diving in a little bit further, you'll see this is the inside of our Scout 300. Again, it's the same, what's called Texas pattern, which is what would have been used on a Jeep T18, which is exactly why I purchased this transfer case. I'm going to be using it on a Jeep CJ7 T18. And as I mentioned, this 300 here, you'll see totally different setup on the back, and this is why you cannot bolt this directly to a T18 without any sort of adapters. But this Scout goes right in without any adapters, and that's why it's sought after. But it's a 1-year only transfer case, excuse me. And like I said, there's some unique things. The shifter, the pin. I'm not even sure if this 4-wheel drive switch will work yet. I haven't installed it. I think it will. It looks the same as the other one, but it's not. Again, these housings are very similar, but they're not 100%. As I've mentioned here, you'll see there's just some small spot where there could be a hole, whereas here there's a hole the same size as this, and there's a blank in it. Not sure what that would be for. If you know, comment below and let us all know what that's for. And by the way, if anything I'm saying here is inaccurate or you want to elaborate on it, please comment, let me know. I'd be happy to update the video. Again, I don't know a lot about these, and that's the reason I'm doing this video actually, is I wish there was something available to at least show me what these things look like. Maybe show me some of the markings. So again, we're on the Scout 300. Just want to show you some of the markings in case it helps you out somehow. Again, that's the Speedo gear, which is different from a CJ Speedo gear. You can even see the setup and how it's mounted is different. And again, the biggest way to differentiate these is by that divot up on the top there. Well, that'll conclude this video. I hope you found this helpful. Again, if there's anything in here that is inaccurate or you want me to elaborate on, or if you have any other information you can add about these, like, is that the correct shifter? That'd be great to know. Thanks for watching.